the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Lori. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week. And welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Business Story of the Week. I am your host, Joshua. And today's question is, what are the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs or business owners make, or anybody really, when trying to sell to corporate clients? Well, that is quite the topic that we love to talk about here on the show, but we do more than that. We talk about deeper stuff like that, and we love to talk about stories. Literally, the second name of the show, stories. And today, Jessica has quite the story for us. She's our guest to answer that question. Jess Lorimer is a TEDx speaker, author, and podcaster. She's worked with over 27,000 entrepreneurs and worldwide organizations, teaching best practice B2B sales in over 17 countries. We have Mrs. Wide on this episode today. She's going to be sharing us her insights and her wisdom and experience and expertise and everything in between. Jess, thank you for being on the show. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. And as always, a bio makes you sound so much more impressive than you ever feel about yourself. So thank you very much for that. The validation was real.
Well, I feel the same. I definitely feel that sometimes you kind of like, "Oh, is that really me?" But this time, just absolutely, the validation is 100% real. It is truly you, the expert to be talking to us about today. But before we really get into it, Jessica or Jess, how did you start getting into corporate career or being, teaching B2B sales? But more than that, as a child, did you always know you were going to get into corporate? What was the story like? What is the origin story of Jess?
Do you know, it's a funny thing. Me and my mum actually went to London when I was about 12 years old. And we were going up
I
the
see.
escalator at Waterloo Station. And I don't know if anyone's ever been on the escalator, but it's huge as you come up from the Northern Line. And my mum was watching all these people in suits, and she was like, "That'll be you one day." And I was like, "No, it won't. No, it won't. I hate that. Oh, that's not for me." And then 10 years later, it was me. So
Oh, wow.
I started out in jewelry sales
Okay.
at 16. So I got fired as a barista. I made 17 cups of cold coffee on the go, and got
Okay.
fired from that job on day one. And
Oh,
as I was waiting for my bus home, I was sat outside a jewelry shop, and this lady was looking in the window, and I got to chatting to her about what she was going to buy. She wanted to buy something for a family member. And I had a few minutes to spare. So I went into the jewelry shop with this lady that I'd never met before. And she ended up buying a quite an expensive item. And the person in the jewelry store asked me if I was related. And I was like, no, I've just met her outside. And so they offered me a job. And at that point, I sort of entered into sales. I started realizing that I was quite good at it because I was interested in other people. And I ended up staying there throughout university, worked full time throughout, and got headhunted by a global recruitment firm when I was 21. And so at that point, I gave up jewelry for selling essentially people into jobs. Always clarify that, otherwise it can be a little bit disconcerting. And then about 5 years in, really burnt out. I got diagnosed with a chronic illness. So I was
oh
diagnosed
no.
with myalgic encephalitis, which was
Oh
really
no.
difficult. I was told that if I didn't give up the kind of 70-hour work weeks, I'd be wheelchair bound by the time I was 35.
Wow.
And I decided to set up my own sales training consultancy then, which it was either the best or worst time to do it. I'm never quite sure. And yeah, I've
Exactly.
been doing it 10
Exactly.
years now.
You've been doing it for 10 years now, but you did it at the cusp of you finding out your chronic illness. Again, like it's probably one of the most relatable things when it comes to what entrepreneurship to business to careers. I bet all our audience and listeners as well can relate to some form of burnout where you just, you just put everything you could possibly get into it until something snapped and then, oops, I'm sick. I'm doing too much work. But it's funny because you said it could have been the best time or the worst time to do it because the timing was quite odd, but then you went out of it. It seems like you wouldn't regret that decision now, but looking back, how would you have done it differently, and why do you think you succeeded in transition successfully transitioning so well from being just doing your own thing, so to speak?
So I think if I hadn't been diagnosed with my illness, I wouldn't have ever left. I wanted a
There
corner
you go.
office. I wanted,
That's
I was
it.
a fully paid up member of the Love Sales Staying This World Club. Um, but when I was diagnosed, there weren't really part-time opportunities. And so companies really wanted people who would work full time. So
Right.
for me, it was a natural decision to say, okay, well, then I'm going to have to explore doing something for
Mhm.
myself. And I was almost in that position where if I didn't make it work, there wasn't an alternative option. So for me, it was a little bit different than, some people start businesses because they have a huge passion that they want to do something completely different in the world. I always wanted to stay with sales. I love sales. I love everything about it, but I couldn't meet the physical demands and the hours anymore of my previous job. So for me, I was like, oh, well, if I'm going to do this business, I have to sell stuff. Otherwise, I'm not going to eat and I'm not going to pay my mortgage. And those things are quite important. So for me, it was really important, especially in that first 6 months, to prioritize doing the right things and to make sure that I didn't just kind of start a business and have a very expensive hobby that I was running. And I think that's
Mhm.
something that a lot of entrepreneurs can kind of fall into over the years is, well, it'll take off eventually.
Wow,
I
wow.
didn't have the luxury of time.
I love how you called it expensive hobby
Yeah.
because it costs something. We kind of get into this hole of thinking that our career, what we're doing, since it feels so fulfilling, is what we do. Like it's a totally we make it our identity, so to speak.
Hmm.
And like you said, if you weren't diagnosed, you probably would not have left because you probably started building your entire life surrounding it because there's validation. We talked about validation just now. There's validation surrounding all of that. And it must have been difficult with the illness as well and jumping into something of the unknown. But now, Jess, you transitioned from a corporate career to helping
Hmm.
entrepreneurs master B2B sales. First of
Yeah.
all, what inspired you to make this change? And of course, there's an illness in there, but why B2B in particular? And how did your background prepare you for this journey?
So I'd worked in both B2B and B2C sales. Jewelry sales was B2C because it's going to a direct consumer. And,
Yes.
and I always found that that was much more emotionally driven. And it was also people have
Interesting.
fixed incomes, right? So if they're buying
Okay.
jewelry or if they're buying services or whatever an individual buys, it is fixed by the amount of disposable income they have available.
Interesting.
Whereas when you sell B2B, it's all logic based. Can you provide the transformation that they're looking for? It also is about value of transformation versus disposable or fixed disposable income. So
Yes.
companies can find budget for things that are more important or higher priority or need a quicker return. And they'll often have quite creative ways to be able to do that, and it's measurable. I think
Hmm.
especially now with the rise in service-based business owners going online, so we have lots of coaches and consultants and people who are going into that online
Everywhere.
education space.
Mhm.
The problem is everyone's doing stuff on social media, which unless you're paying for advertising cannot be measured. Whereas
Yes.
when you're working in the B2B space, you can directly correlate how many sales calls it's going to take you to be able to send how many proposals, to be able to
I love that.
send how many deals out, sign how many contracts, have your average transaction value. all of those things are measurable and predictable as long as you follow the right process. And so for me, I'm somebody who's inherently in my business based on logic over I want validation from the internet. That meant that B2B sales was something that could be taught easier. It was something that would take people away from feeling like they had to become an online influencer. And most importantly, taking people who had genuinely qualified skills in certain areas and get them working with companies that prioritize those things rather than trying to sell to individuals on the internet who were telling them it's too expensive, I don't
Yes.
really know if I
Yes.
want to invest in that,
Yeah.
etc., etc.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not feeling it right now. It doesn't.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not. It's a lot of emotions behind it. Too much obstacles. Too much really kind of to
Yeah.
get through that. Whereas selling corporate, it's really just very direct,
Mhm.
very logical. I love that. I love that you kind of narrowed it down. What would be the best avenue for sales if I were a salesperson who wants to take out the emotional equation out of it, make it more efficient, make it technical, so to speak, but allow you to measure things, I think is a really, really great approach, especially for someone who's sales driven, right? And
Mhm.
your program, I understand, is called Selling to Corporate, and
Yeah.
it has helped thousands of entrepreneurs. Can you share, first of all, some key strategies from your
Yeah, of
program, a
course.
little sneak peek, and what has been some game changers for your clients?
So I think one of the biggest game changers for my clients has been understanding how a B2B sales process actually works. So when we look
Interesting.
at most sales processes, people will look at particular parts and they'll say selling in the DMs is really good and that really works. But nobody really understands where each part of the process lies into each other. And so,
Right,
for
right.
that reason, social selling is very difficult because people don't understand what contributes and what could make a good sale versus what can make a red flag or difficult situation.
Yes.
So, when we start to look at selling to corporate, the framework that I came up with was these 5 steps around
Five
B2B sales.
steps. Okay.
Yeah, so we have clarity. Who are we selling to and what transformation are we wanting to provide? So,
Whoa.
which types of companies are we going to sell to? Are they going to be pharmaceutical companies, retail companies, finance companies, tech companies, whatever? And what transformation are we going to provide? Is it going to be around leadership development? Is it going to be around sales, marketing, whatever that looks like? After understanding who you're selling to and what transformation you're providing, then you look at lead generation. So when you look at B2B lead generation, most people think, oh, it's cold calling. You don't have to do cold calling. I love it, but not everybody does. We actually teach 8 different methods of B2B
Mm,
lead generation.
okay.
But the one thing about lead generation is that it's got to fulfill a purpose. It has to book calls with qualified stakeholders, meaning decision makers in an organization who are interested in your area of specialism and who have the budget or budgetary responsibility to be able to pay you. So
Interesting.
when we start to look at that lead generation piece, instead of being like the online education space, where we talk about funnels a lot. So we have this idea that it's a funnel and you have high volume of people in the top here,
Yep.
and through podcasts and newsletters and webinars,
Yes.
you whittle them down to the tiny percentage of buyers. When we look at B2B, we're flipping that into a pyramid. So up here, we've got this
And
tiny percentage of
oh,
qualified people that we're targeting with our lead generation. And then they buy from us and then they recommend us and then they go to other companies and they buy from us again. And so we just constantly build out that generation of leads and things proactively. So after you have that, then you've got business development. So you've got your sales calls, how you're following up, basically the process of building, maintaining, and leveraging relationships into sales. And then after that, you've got your offers and proposals, creating and articulating solutions that meet the transformations that they want,
right.
and delivery and resell, going in, doing a really great job, being able to upsell or resell solutions to companies that you're not having to
Well,
have hundreds and thousands of clients. So
There you go.
when you start to look at that as a 5-step process, for most people, they can immediately go, okay, this is where I'm going wrong with my B2B
Yes,
system.
of
You
course,
can
of
start to
course.
see where the bits don't match up.
Okay, okay. So I love that. So first of all, help me recap the five. First of all, is deciding what it is, like what transformation basically that you want or the value that you're offering. And there's lead generation, of course,
Yeah.
is, I love how you said, by the way, that you love cold calling. Not everyone does. I'm not I don't have a problem with cold calling either. I feel like I enjoy that, but I can see why people would, but again, I relate to that. What would be how do we recap the three, four, and five?
So then we have business development, and that's the way that you build, maintain, and leverage relationships. So your
Yes,
sales
yes, yes.
calls and how you follow up. Then you've got your offers and proposals. So once you've had a sales call, you can understand what a company actually wants, and you can put together a qualified offer, and you can price it and send a proposal. And then you've got delivery and resell.
Delivery,
So
yes, the
deliver a great
delivery.
experience and upsell or resell them a solution. And essentially, you're just working that cycle every single
Yes.
time you want to make a corporate sale.
Right, 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 right. And I love that you are putting it in a very simplified framework for us because, like you said, once you see these five steps, then you'll understand, like, okay, this is what I'm missing. This is where I'm not good at. This is where I need to improve on. And I understand you also that one of the things that you mentioned is that to make money, your one of your goals and one of the things that you shared it was to make money doing something that you're qualified to deliver, which really
Mm.
is reminds me of what you said towards the last thing. Because again, all those four steps, you could be good at all those four steps, but on the final one, you actually can't deliver. You actually can't do anything about it. How many? Uh, you've had the diverse experience. 27,000 entrepreneurs, individuals, organizations. How often have you seen this, and why do you think it's so? Is it prevalent? Is it too much? Why do you think it is, you know, is it, if it's widespread or not, why do you think so?
I think it's very widespread in the online marketing and education space. And I don't think I'd be the only person who would listen back to this episode and think there are definitely courses I've bought where they said it was going to be amazing and it would have everything I needed. And then you buy it and you're like, this is not good. And it's not even this doesn't provide what I thought. This is just genuinely not good. And somebody has taken very little care over what they've produced. In the corporate space, that's very different because obviously, if you can't deliver for a consumer or an
Yeah.
individual has very limited means of recourse on that. So
Yes.
a lot of the time, people will internalize. They'll say, "Oh, well, I bought this course from this huge guru, and I couldn't make it work for me, so it must be a problem with me,
Yes.
not
Yes.
the materials were flawed or there was no support or whatever that looks like." Whereas when you go to a company and you are the expert and you're saying to them, this is the transformation that you want, and these are the steps that we believe will get you there. If you go in and you deliver a half hearted experience or you don't deliver what you say you can, they're very easy and they're very quick to take notice of that and be like, okay, cool. Well, this is what we paid for, but this is what we've been given. So can we
There you
talk
go.
about the difference? And
There
it's
you
that
go.
directness in communication that means that you tend to have people inside corporate organizations who will get much better experiences with coaches, with consultants, with speakers,
There-
trainers, done for you service providers, because those people are going into corporates really genuinely understanding what they do, experts in their field, wanting to deliver a great experience for
Okay.
the validation and for future sales.
I love how you put it together. Online marketing is a lot more rampant with
Mm.
not under delivering, so to speak, but because it's B2B, again, it's logical. There's metrics, there's, technicalities to it. It's clear to measure like what you didn't, deliver for me. Because with, with the advent of a lot of coaching today is about like, you didn't finish that because there's a block, there's an
Mm,
obstacle in your spirit,
yeah.
in your chakra. We need to unblock that. It's not my fault that you didn't finish your course, that you didn't get the value. It's because of you, not because of me. And wow, I cannot like, I don't know how. Of course, that's an entirely different conversation on its own. But right here today, you're teaching us about B2B and overcoming these challenges and these so to delivering on these metrics that we promised.
Mm.
I want to go back a little bit on challenges, of
Yeah.
course. What are some common challenges entrepreneurs have faced when trying to break into the corporate market, trying to sell B2B, and what are the common challenges, and how have you helped them overcome them
Mm.
effectively?
I think one of the biggest challenges is actually belief that corporate companies would buy from solopreneurs. So it's one of the biggest things that I hear is, but would big companies really work with someone like me? And I always think that's really interesting because I have clients who've worked with some of the world's largest streaming platforms, the world's largest music platforms, the world's largest
Mhm.
social media platforms, and their company consists of just them. And it takes a lot, I think, of confidence to say, actually, I might just be a solopreneur, but I have confidence in my ability to deliver and what I do and the impact that I can make, then actually I think I'm better than going into an organization and being a huge other company, because most organizations will hire external suppliers, but large companies that go in tend not to be able to provide the same kind of customer experience because they're so tied
Right.
by red tape, and they can only offer certain things and they can't ever change or adapt because it's just not possible. So I think that would
True.
be the first thing. And what I always say to people is you've got to understand how agile small suppliers are able to be and how adaptable they are in comparison to the bigger
Of
organizations work
course.
with, right?
Absolutely.
You've also got to understand that the average person who wants to sell to a corporate is far more experienced than the average person who will go in from a bigger organization. So if you look at any
Yes.
of the big consultancies, they have huge graduate schemes. So when companies are paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars or pounds or whatever currency you're operating in for somebody to come in and be a consultant, a lot of the time they're getting a 22-year-old graduate who's literally never worked. They've never been in a corporate environment. They have no idea what's
Absolutely.
going on,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Exactly. Hmm.
So if you think about that, if you've already had a 5-year, 10-year corporate career, you already know more about the challenges that companies are facing than somebody who's been hired on a grad scheme 2 months ago. So we have that as being one of the most common challenges. I think the other really common challenge is the fact that most people who go into being coaches or consultants or speakers, trainers for corporates or any other environment, they're not salespeople.
Oh,
So they've never worked in sales. So they
yes.
don't
There
actually
you go.
understand how a sales process works or what to do or how to generate new business. And I think people take that really hard because they're not operating a best practice process because they don't know what it is, and why should they? They haven't, grown up in sales. But then when it doesn't work, instead of looking for a best practice process to follow, they go, no, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing now. And eventually it might work.
Oh,
And that is the equivalent of just bashing your head against a brick wall and
absolutely.
hoping that your forehead's not going to bleed, right? Like it's baffling to me and to anybody else. So we have to start thinking about, if we want to make successes of our businesses, if we want to sell to corporates effectively, we have to start putting in place processes that we can measure and troubleshoot. You wouldn't expect to go to your heart surgeon and them to go, oh, yeah, fine, we'll just get in and have a bit of a look and then we'll find
Right.
out what's wrong with you. You would expect them to do tests, to review your bloods, to do all of the things before they ever put a scalpel near your chest. So that's
There
what
you
we
go.
need to start doing with our own businesses is, what is my current sales process? Do I have one? And if I don't, what steps do I need to put in place so I can start to measure which parts I'm doing well and which parts aren't working?
I love that. You put two things together right there that I absolutely love because first off, number one, solopreneurs, people that think it like corporates working with one person, but I love how you put a correlation with like you're hired as fresh graduate. What are you talking about, right? Like why don't you,
Yeah.
why not consider it a solopreneur? You don't you have no hesitation with this fresh graduate, but at the same time, you also said that sales isn't always everyone's forte, and I think that is such a it's a skill, right? Anyone can pick it up, anyone can learn it. If you are truly getting into the space of the B2B space and corporate, selling to corporate, it's a must have skill. You cannot not have, even if you're not the salesperson yourself, you have to have a sales process because you are leaving so much inefficiency on the table or efficiency on the table, so to speak, when you are not, especially with things that can be measured, you are not measuring it without a sales process. I love that. I think that is such a important, crucial insight that you've provided us today, and I hope our audience and listeners feel the same about that. I mean, that's quite mind blowing. Just your experience really shines through in the way how simple that you explain things and how simplified you really put things together because of course you work with 27,000 entrepreneurs, numerous global organizations. Could you share to us a success story that stands out and illustrates the impact of your work? Again, like I told you, I give you a little bit of warning. The second name of the show is literally stories. So we love stories on here, and tell us one that really stands out for you, Jess.
I love that. I would actually say so. There was a lady I was working with a couple of years ago now, and she joined one of our programs and that teaches end-to-end sales life cycles. And she had never sold to corporate clients before. So she'd actually worked in the storytelling space in the entrepreneur world. And she had carved out a little niche for herself there where she would help women to tell their own stories and use it to create their online brand. And she decided, she was like, look, it's really difficult to do. And it can be quite traumatic to listen to some of the adversities that people have overcome. And I want to work with corporates. And so she joined my program during the pandemic. So we're talking like a couple of years ago. And it was a difficult time to join any program during the pandemic because you couldn't do a lot. And everyone said, corporates aren't hiring right now. And she put her skills into the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. So she is a second generation Filipina. Her parents had emigrated to the US. She had then moved with her husband to Spain. So she had all of these cool ways that she was using her own story and her own difference and her own lived experience. And she was saying to
Okay.
companies, I want to help you support employees who might also be like me and who might also feel like they've gone somewhere and they don't feel the same as everybody else, or they don't look the
Okay.
same as everybody else, or they don't have the
Yes.
same background or language. And she started working with some of the world's largest social media organizations to do
Wow.
that for their remote employees, which was incredible, especially during a time when actually diversity, equity, and inclusion was a huge topic. We had so many difficult conversations that needed to happen. But around the pandemic, there were so many difficult conversations that needed to happen around race and gender and sexuality and lots of
Yes.
things. And she started working with these organizations, and she actually celebrated her first 100K month 6 months in to the program. So she'd gone from selling like $1,500 packages to individuals to having a $100,000 month with organizations that she was like, I never thought that they would hire me, this kind of woman who was like, I want to show you how people feel different. I want to show you how you can value those people. I want to show you how you can make them more included in the
Wow.
workplace. And I think that that's phenomenal. You know, it's all down to her hard work.
Absolutely.
It's all down to her implementing. But I think that it's we forget sometimes that our lived experience and the ways that we use that experience could be really valuable to people who don't have those same experiences. And that's the great thing about working with organizations, is that they want different perspectives, not an echo chamber. And I think that is really powerful.
I love that. And of course, how fulfilling must it have felt for you to give her that courage as well, to
Yeah.
give her that kind of like someone to back her up, like, no, this is exactly what corporations are looking for. You will blow up, you will succeed in this space because clearly there is value in what you're teaching. And I love stories like that because, of course, like, it's not just sales are built on stories, right? Like it's all about like, but more importantly, when sale, genuine stories, so to speak, and stories that truly bring value. There's truly meaningful stories. Just you are no stranger to that, of course, and you have worked with so many successful entrepreneurs and organizations. As a last personal insight to get into this, why do you think in your case you have been so successful and you've worked with so many such a wide range of organizations across the globe, 17 countries? Why do you think, what was the key for you in helping others succeed?
I think that if you looked at why I was successful in an industry that is competitive, it would be because I understand that the things I do today will impact my business in 90 days' time. So when I
Wow.
get up in the morning, I'm not doing things for today, I'm doing things for August, September, October, and so on. And I think that sometimes as entrepreneurs, we can fall into being so reactive of the day to day that we forget to
Yes.
build for the longer term. So I think that's probably the difference. If I looked at myself versus where some of my clients start, is I will do all the things that I need to do today because I know that that will reap rewards in August or September or October. And I'm not so worried about today.
I love that. I love that, Jess. I was going to close this with and ask you for a quick bit of wisdom before we leave, but you just left us. We just dropped one beautiful piece of wisdom on that one, just today, but knowing that today is going to spill on over in 90 days ahead and over the months. You just focus on today and do what you can, do your best. And just today, I loved having you today on the show. I mean, it's been great. You talk about your concept so simply. You share it with such passion. It exudes. I can feel it all the way across the globe in this talk today. I'd love to give you this opportunity. Where can we find you? Where can we connect with you? Where are you most active in? And where can we learn more about what Jess does for the globe and the world at wide for everyone else?
I love it. Well, if you are already a podcast listener, I also run a podcast called Selling to Corporate. I, as you can
Yes.
tell, don't name anything differently. I'm too lazy. So if you are somebody who is interested in learning more about selling to corporate, then you can absolutely find me over there. I produce 2 episodes a month that give really practical sales tips. And if you want to connect just because you want to hear what's going on in my brain day to day, I'm over on LinkedIn. You can find me. I think I'm the only Jessica Lorimer on LinkedIn, which is probably an accolade that I should give myself.
Uh,
And I'm over there posting my random sales thoughts, pictures of my dog. It's all going on.
all right, let's see. Well, I just sent you a connect request. I want to see all of that. I want to see all
Brilliant.
your ideas. And again, the only Jess Lorimer there is to find. And ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all, of course. I welcome you to listen to our podcast, Selling to Corporate. And Jess, it's been lovely. You've been lovely. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, the pleasure is mine, and to all our audience listeners, it's a pleasure. It's theirs as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening on the episode. We will see you on the next one. Bye bye.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.